Hi, welcome back to Go Full Amazon. This is Jen, and we are in episode number 4. We hope you've enjoyed our other 3. I wanted to give you a little introduction and let you know that tonight we are going to be discussing divorcing well. Tara and I are both divorced, and we have been able to do that in a way that is actually kind, respectful, and actually pretty loving. So we'd like to share our experience with you, and who knows what will else come up. Hope you enjoy. So I'd like to start out with a quote like we normally do each episode. This comes from Easter Sunday service at my church. And it was interesting because, Easter Sunday, the story's the same. All over the country, everywhere. It's the same story. But however, at my place, they, my pastor said this really cool quote that said, "What if we rise above an ordinary life and choose to live an extraordinary life?" And for me, that was something that I didn't think was ever going to be really possible at a time, especially after, in the middle, and while I was going through my divorce. So tonight, I really think it'll be really interesting to talk about like kind of how we went through that. I think it's important for us to share that. And I know for you and I, we both got to do it in a way that was not ugly and was not painful. Well, it was painful because it's a divorce. Right. I mean, divorce is painful. But I think we did it in a way that, like, today we can sit here years after and know that, one, it was the right thing for us, and two, that we were able to do it in a way that, like, our kids and even us are really okay.
Yeah. I think our story is probably a little bit different. Like, we're peaceful now, but we did not start off our divorce on a peaceful note. There was definitely some hardship along the way, and rightfully so. I think when you first get divorced, you have that bitterness, anger. It's kind of like a death. You're losing something. And I will admit I did some passive-aggressive things to my ex-husband, and he returned the favor several times.
Oh, thank you.
But we were also immature and young, and, you make excuses for yourself as why it's okay to hurt somebody. And I think what we eventually learned how to do was to put our kids first. And if you, at the end of the day, can look at your kids and be like, what is going to make them happy and make them have a good day, then I think you can actually push a lot of those grudges aside and really look at the person in front of you and try to make your kids as happy as possible. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it was really interesting because what happened for me, this was Easter Sunday that this happened, and I struggled during the holidays, and I'm very open about that. Like, I struggle through the holidays because I either don't have the kids, or I choose not to be with family. Like this Easter, I didn't have the kids, and I chose not to be with my family. Like, I could have gone a million places, but I consciously made the decision that I just didn't want to. So I spent the day by myself, and I never thought that I'd be okay with that, because I'm one that suffers from, that loneliness sometimes, from like not having my family with me and my boys, and, what I think it should look like is really what it is. Like, I had this image in my head of what it should look like. And I think that's why I stayed married for as long as I did, because it's like that image, and that's what you do, and you stay in it. And, he was handsome, and we had these kids, and, we had one kid at the time. And I got caught up in that. And so what happened for me on Easter, I got dressed and I went to church. So I went by myself because I knew that was important. So I went to church, and I even wore a dress, and I shaved my legs, and I wore heels. And I remember Steph, I walked in, and Steph was like, "Oh my God, you are all dolled up." And I was like, "Well, of course." And she's like, "I didn't know your legs were that long." I'm like, "Well, I am tall, so yeah."
Isn't it amazing when we actually shower and wash our hair, people think we're really pretty.
I was like, "Well, thank you very much." Yes, I'm not wearing a sports bra, and I actually do have
They're like, "What'd you do?" You're like, "I showered."
I showered and I shaved. Isn't it amazing? And the message was, as it always is when I do go to church, which I love, is the message is always something that I totally need to hear. But even bigger than that was Steph and I were talking afterwards, and she and I were just sitting there talking, and of course I got emotional because I'm such a sap, and I just started talking about what was going on for me, and being lonely and being emotional and feeling that and missing my family and all this kind of stuff, but then also knowing that I was making that choice. And then it kind of rolled into a little bit of what was going on in my dating life, and what was happening there, and any of the guys that I was kind of seeing but not really kind of involved with, and kind of keeping people away. And just kind of my patterns. And then our pastor came over and sat and talked to us. So like, which I think I've talked about my pastor. I think he's the coolest guy ever. He's like my age and he's a CrossFit guy and he's just wicked cool. He's got this beard and he's just cool. Like he wears like a plaid shirt and jeans.
He's
and
like a lumberjack that preaches.
He is. He's like the sweetest lumberjack, but he also kills it in CrossFit. Like he did Fran, which if anybody knows, like Fran is like this crazy, is a workout that is like 21 thrusters and then 21 pull-ups and then 15 and then 9 and you do it for time. And so I did it. We both did it on Saturday. He did it in like 4 minutes. And of course, after service, I was like, nice Fran time, by the way. He's like, thanks. But anyway, so, we sat there and we're talking and it was really cool because it like, it gave me an opportunity. So he came over and sat and talked to us and he saw that I was crying and he saw that I was upset. And it was what came out of this conversation, which was just so soul-filling and helpful for me, was that like really the story that I continue to tell myself around my divorce. I've been divorced for 7 years now. I was pregnant with Cooper when I got divorced. But I tell myself this story that like, and I don't know why I stay stuck in it, but it's almost like it keeps me in a place where I'm able to like keep people away. To tell you the truth, it's probably exactly what it is. But I have this story where I say that he left me. Like I say that my husband left me and I was pregnant. When the reality is, and this is like, thank God for my friends that remind me of this, because I will go back to that place really easily because somehow it's comfortable for me, is that I say that, but the reality is that he and I were in therapy like way before I even got pregnant with Cooper. And our marriage was our marriage was not really all together even when I got pregnant. Like, clearly, obviously we were doing things physically that were, happening because I got pregnant, but, we may have been saving the marriage a little bit, like thinking that sex was going to do it. And, all it did was get me pregnant. Did not save the marriage. I just now have 2 kids, which is great. I love that, but I stay stuck to that story. And so having this conversation with Keith and with Steph, like it just allowed me to really kind of like process that a little bit and really kind of get in touch with that. And I think that what you and I keep talking about here with the podcast and putting ourselves out there is that like my goal in my job is to live the most authentic self that I can possibly live. And if I keep telling myself that bullshit story, like that's not being authentic, and if I keep participating in anything that's not what I really want in my life, whether it's relationships, jobs, parenting styles, like whatever it is, I'm not going to be authentic. And I'm going to feel like shit when I come on here and I talk to everybody and say, oh, this is what I'm doing, when really I'm like, oh, really, I'm kind of like not doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think it's good that you brought up the stories that we tell ourselves, because I think you and I have talked about this theme in so many other areas of our life because it protects the ego, right? Like we all want to believe that we are perfect and that we are incapable of causing harm or pain to another human being. But the reality is, and this is, I'm sorry if this gets a little spiritual, but I believe in Christ and I believe in forgiveness. And the reason he forgives us is because we're all freaking sinners.
Yeah.
Like we sin and we hurt people. We hurt the people we love on a daily basis, sometimes intentionally and sometimes unintentionally. And I think one of the reasons you probably tell yourself that story is to protect yourself, because there's probably some things that you didn't do right in the marriage as well.
For sure.
And that's hard to admit.
Sure.
That's hard to admit and say those things.
Yeah.
And I know I'm certainly guilty of not participating in a fulfilling marriage the first time around. I still love and care about my ex-husband very, very much, and I'm glad he found this amazing girl that he's going to be marrying soon, and she's wonderful to my kids. But one of the things him and I have been able to talk about now that the pain of divorce is kind of gone is we talk about, how we brought out toxicity in each other.
Oh, the toxicity. Yeah. Interesting.
And how now that we've been apart and we've grown, we've gotten older and we've had some lessons learned and watching other friends divorce and, marry and remarry and so forth. I think we've done it pretty well despite having some bad past, and I think it's because we forgive each other and we've now just admitted like, hey, I screwed up, I did this to you, and you did this to me, and I'm really sorry. And I think that's the biggest thing that's helped us to grow and be peaceful together is forgiving each other, because we weren't perfect.
Yeah. And I think that's all part of it. Like, I know, and I always tell myself too, I'm like, it's okay that it didn't work out. Like, it's all right. Like, it doesn't mean that we are flawed or it's a failure or whatever it is. I think some people think of it that way, but I know for me, like, I look at my ex-husband and I'm like, I will always love him, and I do. I love him. I love him. I'm glad we're not married anymore. I think he's a great dad. I think he's a good friend. I look at him, and he's actually getting married again too, and I'm so like I'm beyond happy for him because he found somebody who can love him that I was incapable of doing. Like he's being loved in a way now that I was completely incapable of because of whatever it was going on with me. Like he never was good enough. Like I know that. I know that he lived in a home where like I put the pressure on him that he was never good enough. And who wants to live in that? That's sucky. You know what I mean? Like, and we had our own stuff. And I brought my own stuff to the table, and I'm tough, and I'm like, a little bitchy sometimes, which I know, but live with me. And I am like, I have
That's
a
what
big,
we love about you.
I know I have a big personality. I'm also a little bit of a rage monster. And like, I was tough. And like, I expected you to do shit and get stuff done. And I had my ideas of what a man should be doing. And if he wasn't like, doing the manly stuff, like, and I had to do it, like I was pissed, because I didn't want to do it.
Right. That it's funny that you say that because I think you and I share that trait because one of the things I do is I put these expectations, and this is where I fail in my relationships, is I won't say what my expectations are. I just expect the other person to know what they are and like read my mind. And I've had to learn through therapy and like reading self-help books and all that stuff that, you have to say, hey, I don't like it when you do this, or I need you to do this to make me happy, or we're not going to be happy.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do.
Well, and it's a hard thing to do because there's a flip side of that too, where, we also know that it's not someone's job to make us happy.
Right.
It really isn't. Like, it's really not our partner's job to make us happy. It's like our partner's job so that we can each like kind of mingle and mesh together, but almost in our separate ways. Like I watched my parents do that, and they were so good about, my mom mostly more so than my dad, but like my mom just let him be who he is. I mean, he was like foul mouthed and racist and like, all this kind of stuff. And, but she was always like, oh, Robert, it just, she just was like, I mean, I think I see the dynamic a little bit in your parents when we spend time with your parents, but like, I think that there's a level of like letting them, what I'm learning now, let's just qualify this, like as I'm learning now and what I expect in my next marriage, because I will know I'll be married again at some point in my life, is that like there's a level of letting the person be the person that they are, because I have no control over them, and I have no control over how they behave or how they react or anything like that. But hopefully it'll be a mutual and respectful with the same goals and visions. I guess is really it. Like when I was first getting married, I didn't know what my goals and my visions were. He was just hot, and he was like big and tall, and we were going to make good babies. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, all right, this will work. And he was a nice guy. Did he have the work ethic that I have? Did he have the drive that I have? No, he doesn't. So those major things that like are really actually very important, not just the fact that he's hot. Like, that probably is not going to be my decision the second time around.
I think you have to find someone that shares the same life path that you, because, we all want to, be next to someone who's super hot. And, I've seen those like live sore advertisements where I just want to snuggle in bed with someone super hot and have ice cream and eat pizza. And but the reality is we have to find someone who has the same life goals. Because at the end of the day, someday we're going to be old and ugly, and our boobs are going to be able to be slung over our shoulders. And you really better like the person that you're with. Because
well, it's interesting because, obviously now that I'm exposed to this in the hospital, I mean, what I love most about my job is like I talk to everybody. And, and I really want to know people's stories. And so like, I find that I talk to a lot of the older people, because older people, I just love the old dudes. I don't know. I never thought I would, but I love the old dudes. And they talk about like, second marriages, first marriages, marriages that have lasted 70 years, like, things like that. So I always am like, it's like this social experiment. And I'm like, so what did you do differently? And I ask them, I'm like, I know I'm working on their bodies, but I'm like, I want to know like what's happening in their homes, like what their secrets are. And even someone like, as of late, I worked with a man who was on a second marriage, and he just said, he's like, I was capable of choosing better. He's like, I was capable of knowing what it is that I was looking for and what I wanted. And we both had the understanding that like, we were in the middle of like a busy life. Like, cause I didn't even think of my life. I'm like, I'm single, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, how is that all going to work? Like I have 2 kids, and like, if I'm not at work, I'm at the gym. And if I'm not at the gym, then I'm at soccer practice. Like I have Wednesday at 2:00 and maybe a Friday night, like every other month. Like, so how is that all going to work? Like, and they said, yeah, that's what happened. So like, they're like, yeah, we dated for a really long time and before there was anything really serious. And I'm like, I think that's going to work for me. Like, I just actually see that I would probably just date somebody very casually without any kind of big, huge commitment for a long time, because how's it going to work? Like, I love my house. I don't want someone moving into it.
Right. And we're at that age where, you don't necessarily want to rock your kids' worlds in
Yeah.
terms of like changing the the day-to-day
Yeah.
patterns that they've gotten used to, because they're your kids are in the school age years,
Yeah.
and those years they're critical, and
Yeah.
they have a lot of emotions going on and hormone changes, and
Yeah.
you get into that dating lifestyle, and it throws everything out,
is.
and you need someone who kind of has the same path as
Yeah.
you.
Well, also too, like I also know that I don't, it's not just me. Like my package, like if someone's coming in and is signing up to be with me, which is wonderful and great, like I'm fantastic. So they're lucky to have me, but I come with my kids, I come with an ex-husband, I come with his wife, and we all get along. Like you have to be in that, like you're going to have to know that like that mix comes along with me, And again, when we first got divorced, did I ever think this was going to be a possibility? No, I never thought that. I mean, and Seth and I, we talk all the time about like we should teach a class, because he and I have really been able to, they're definitely in the beginning. There were some times I found some old journals and I was like, oh yeah, I did hate him for a little while. Right in the beginning, I mean, just because it's all so raw and like so, so new. But it really, we got to a place where we were always really kind and respectful for each other. And I think that was a key to it. Like, I think the most important thing that I would ever suggest for somebody is that like you just really take your ego out of it. And know that like it's okay, no matter what the reasons are, like it's all going to be okay. And two, that like surround yourself with some friends that will like definitely support you, and don't bash them. Like there's like it is the most useless sense of energy that you could ever spend on talking shit and saying bad things and being nasty,
Right.
because that that doesn't go away. That
Your kids will remember that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were really good about doing that. Like even when you're angry, because anger passes and that goes away, and those words are out there in the world forever, and you can't take them back.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the good things that we've done, and obviously you and Seth have done.
Yeah.
Is because at the end of the day, he's a good parent.
Yeah.
You're a good parent, and you both love your kids.
Totally.
And, my ex and I, we both love our kids to death, and we would do anything for them. So yeah. Yeah,
and really, and for him too, because I always think about it too. I'm like, this is somebody that I married. It's not like some total scumbag loser.
You
like,
you loved him at some point.
There was a time that I like totally loved him. I have to know, for me personally though, that I have to just be careful. And I don't know, people might identify with this, but I know for me personally, I have to be careful with how much interaction I do participate in with like as a family unit. There's been times where we have done things just the four of us, and I have to tell you, like emotionally, I can get pretty fucked up over that. Like I can get a little like just kind of like, wait a minute, this is the way it was supposed to be, and like I really kind of grieve that. And especially if I'm going to go home by myself and he's taking the boys. There's been a couple incidents. Like I think we went to the Red Sox all together. It was like the boys' first time we went to the Red Sox, and like Seth and I took the boys to the Red Sox game, and I remember like driving home, and it was like the four of us in the car, and I'm driving and he's next to me, and then the boys are in the back seat, and it was just one of those moments where I was like, this isn't what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah.
Like, you motherfucker is really what I was saying in my head. When like, again, and it's really, he's not the motherfucker. Like it's really, this is not on him, but like, it was really easy for me to go there.
Well, I think it's that fleeting moment of loss.
Yeah.
Like you still, that's I think divorce is just a hard thing. It's like a death that never goes away.
Yeah. Oh, that's
like,
a good way of putting it.
You know what I mean? Because,
death doesn't usually go away.
Well, I mean, people, I guess what I'm trying to say is like when you lose people, like I lost my grandmother a few years ago, and you're able to kind of, eventually you get better. But I think sometimes with divorce, it's almost such a personal thing that even though you're okay and it does get better, certain moments bring you back into that. Could I have done it?
Yeah.
Could I have been better? Could I have made it work? And I think you start to doubt yourself and wonder, like, did I do the right thing? Yeah. And that's all normal.
Yeah, it's all normal. And I think that was really cool about even when my conversation with Keith was, and he just kind of gave me permission, because of course I talked about like, how I've been struggling with dating, and he said, he's like, Jenny, he's like, you just might not be ready. And I'm like, it's been 7 years. And he's like, I don't think it's the divorce he's like, it's not the fact that you're divorced you're holding on to. He's like, you just might not be ready for like what's coming for you, And I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, you're just supposed to be completely just taking care of yourself right now. And what is it? And this is the cool part about it is like, so when he said that to me, I was like, oh, okay, so I can just sit back and like just relax and just do me, and like it will all kind of, and which there's a piece of me that's kind of always believed that. Like I always kind of have had these great moments in my life where like, big things have happened and I didn't know what the hell was going to happen, and what came on the other side of it was something beautiful, amazing that I could not even imagine. So I'm thinking that like I'm in one of those moments again in my life. And again, this was all in Easter, and Keith said that to me, and he was like, you just might not be ready, and just, just do you until the person that is meant for all of this is going to show up, and don't worry about it. So, and what's happened then in the last, and we can just kind of like talk about this in the next like 2 weeks, over the last couple of weeks, like crazy things have happened in my life that have nothing to do with a man or a relationship, because I'm not one of those that is like, if I don't have a man, then I am worthless. I don't really operate like that. I would love to have that, because I mean, believe me, I'd love to cuddle at night. I'd like to have sex. Like, I mean, all the stuff that comes with like having a boyfriend, that'd be really nice. I mean, I'd like to argue with somebody. I'd like to cook in the kitchen, like all that stuff that comes along with it. I mean, I would love that. But I also don't really like, my value, my worth is not tied to the fact that like, whether I have a boyfriend or not. Like, I'm not a serial like dater, I'm not a ferocious dater, like where I'm like, oh my God, I have to.
I have to say, the vibe I get off of you on a daily basis is you are putting out this vibe of things that you need to achieve. And I think actually doing this whole podcast, and we'll talk about some of the things that have been happening to us in the past 2 weeks, but I think there's this, something big is happening to you and to I, and I think that's where your heart and soul are right now. And so I think that, what's that movie, where you just put yourself out there and the universe like brings
The Secret?
The Secret, it's kind of like that.
I was like, The Notebook. I didn't know where we were going with that.
Which I love The Notebook. We were just talking about that today, and I'm going to get all sidetracked because we were talking about like movies that the man that you're with has to have seen, and it's The Notebook.
Oh, The
That's
Notebook?
one of those movies, yeah.
Is it Channing Tatum in that Notebook?
No. I can't remember.
I can't
Noah!
remember. I don't think I've ever seen it, to tell you the truth.
Oh my God.
It's going to make me cry.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I know. I don't want to watch it.
No, we have to.
Okay, we'll watch it. We'll have a movie.
Anyway.
We'll have a movie night.
I just lost my damn point.
That's okay. No, they're saying that like, I think that's where and I think that's what it meant.
Right.
The
Your energy is out
yeah.
there in a different place.
I think so too.
And I think that's a good thing, because I think you were kind of in this moment where you had things that you wanted to do, but things hadn't fallen into place, and you just, got your degree in what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And now I just kind of want you to open up and talk about like
Oh,
what happened
God.
to you in this past week.
I know, it's so
this kind of all
crazy.
circles.
I know, it's kind of crazy. So yeah, so I guess we'll get off the divorce topic. So I think we talked about, obviously Steph was just on last week about pelvic floor and pelvic health, and when I went back to school, I mean, believe me, this was never something. First of all, I didn't know anything about pelvic health when I went back to school, and two, it was never something that I would think I would even care about. And it has become something that I am so passionate about, and so moved by like how important it is for women and men at every point of their life, and especially like where we are in our life right now, and fit people, unhealthy people. I mean, really everybody needs to know about it. And I talk to everybody about it. Even my kids are like, Mom, we know the pelvic floor is fascinating. We know. That's what they say. They're like, Mom, we know pelvic floor is fascinating. You say it all the time.
Trust me, it will be fascinating.
I'm like, don't you worry, guys.
Give
You
it a
will
few more
be.
years.
They are so sick of me talking about the pelvic floor. But so what's happened is, when I took my job at the hospital, part of when I got hired, I told them, I said, I was working in a clinic that was developing the pelvic floor program, and I was part of that. And so, when I came to the hospital, I was nervous about losing that part of my scope of practice. I was like, oh my God, no, this is something I really want to do. So I had mentioned it in my interview, and I said, listen, this is what I want to do. This is something I'd like to do. I'd like to bring this to the hospital. I'd like to be part of a program that introduces this whole piece to women's health and wherever it goes, So when I got hired, that's what I put into my, I made sure that was something that I was told, which was new for me. Like, I wasn't always someone who's like, this is what I want. This is what I want to do. This is a part of who I am. And they were like, okay, yeah, we want you to do that. So this last week, my boss found me in the hallway on my way into work on Wednesday. And she was like, Jen, she's like, I just got out of a meeting, and basically this long and the short is that like, this is all starting to now come to fruition. Like they met with the women's department. And so now I'll be able to do some like, we're going to start the conversation, and there's a new urologist that's coming on board that now wants this pelvic floor PT for all of his patients. And so they we want to make sure we're getting that program kind of started. And I'm like, oh my God. And again, like I've been there for 3 months. So it's like, oh, this is like actually happening. And then, and now you and I are like developing this now with the business, and you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I am a plant-based athlete, and I actually started that in January. And for some of you that don't know, I did my first fitness competition back in November of 2017, And I ended up really loving doing it. And now I'm probably going to do a few shows every year. And now I'm scheduled to do one at the end of May. But I had been reading some books over the summer about plant-based eating, and I became fascinated with it and wanted to try it in preparation for my next show. And now I've completely embraced this lifestyle, and I'm meeting all these different people who embrace the lifestyle as well. And I talk about it with a lot of passion because I really do believe in it. And recently I was talking about it in the lunchroom with one of my colleagues, and one of the doctors overheard me, and she was like, oh my God, she's like, there is a women's collaborative in Providence in the fall, and I would love to have you as a guest speaker. And I was like, oh, I can talk forever.
Yeah, especially about plants.
Sign me up. Where's the dotted line? Is there a hook involved? Is anyone going to drag me off the stage? Because I'll talk.
Oh yeah, you will.
So this is like some cool stuff that is happening. And in addition, Jen and I have been kind of talking about venturing into an online nutritional coaching business. And we officially became an LLC this week. And we don't have anything planned just yet, but we're working on it. We're working on a logo and coming up with a website and coming up with what we're going to do, because we're finding that we love working with our tribe of people. And you know what? We may not have all the certifications that you would desire, but we've been living the lifestyle for years and years and years. Yeah. And I think people gravitate towards us, and they like us. And I think it's like the perfect thing for us to delve into.
Yeah. It's been very exciting. I know before we started tonight, I did tell Tara, I was like, I'm feeling very overwhelmed. I'm fearful and I'm overwhelmed, just because I'm a natural, like, I love to move forward and I love to do a lot of things, but then all of a sudden I shrink and I'm like, oh my God, I'm terrified. And I have that self-sabotage, almost kind of like, there's a piece of me that does that, but I also say, screw you, and I'm going to do it anyway. So that's the good news, is that, like, because I was totally honest with her. I was like, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I'm like, I don't know if I can do everything. I'm like, I'm feeling like I won't be able to do it all, but I know we will. And we're just going to let it manifest the way it is. I just had to, like, make sure I got that out, because otherwise I would be like, it would just eat at me,
Right. Well, we're not quitting our day job.
No, we still have to work. No,
we
which
still
is
have
good.
bills to pay.
Which is good. We do.
401ks that we need, and children to feed.
I got some pelvic floors to fix.
But that's okay. I think, we can, like I said to you before, I think we can make it as big or as little as we want. And I think we have a lot of support. We have a lot of really good friends and family that are looking out for us. Yeah. And I foresee a lot of good things in our future.
Because I think when it comes down to the bottom line, which is why I think we are doing what we're doing, is that we really want connection. We want connection. And even part of, like, what I remember Keith was talking about with me is that we all want to be known and loved. Like, we all want to feel known and loved, like, and I think that's what everybody's looking for. And I think that in this place that we're at, whether it's at the hospital or it's with our podcast or it's with the coaching business, I think we have the ability to touch people in ways that that make a difference. Like, we had an experience just recently.
Actually, I just want to pull this up, and I have to be careful because I don't want to reveal this person's identity, but we've been fearful about whether or not this podcast will have durability, but even if it doesn't, I just want to read you a little blurb of what someone wrote to us recently, because in the end, this is what makes it all worth it, regardless of whether we become superstars or we just stay our average Jenn and Tara
from South County.
South County. But it says, I got this message and it says, "Hi Tara, I was having a particularly hard day today, but after listening to your podcast, I feel better. I'm in the very beginning stages of getting divorced from my husband. I guess today I was just upset, wondering, worrying about the future and if I'll ever get to a happy place again. I really liked what you guys said about everything happening for a reason and at the right time. I truly believe everything does happen for a reason, and one day I'll be in a good place and at peace. And your podcast helped me remember that after I had been having doubts today." And I think that is perfect because that's what we were talking about today. Mm-hmm. And I think you are in a happier place right now. I'm in a happier place, and we are focused on finding our own source of happiness. And even though I'm remarried and you're dating, I don't seek happiness in my spouse. Like, he's there and he's great and I love him and he's a good father and he's a good husband, but my source of happiness has to come from me and the things that I'm doing. And I think you're doing that too. And I think the right person is going to just naturally gravitate towards you.
Yeah, and I just think that's kind of the way it is, and I think that that's one of the most important things is that anybody can do is that we just find that like we don't put that pressure on somebody or something else because it's all temporary. The reality is it's all temporary. Like we are stuck with ourselves and what we're doing and how we want to show up into the world, to the world. And it's funny, like one of my oldest patients that I worked with last week, he was like in his 90s and and he was doing some incredible things, but it was all about connection. Like at the end of his life, he's like, I want the people to show up at my funeral, overwhelm my family about how I made them feel. And it had nothing to do with money. It had nothing to do with jobs. It had nothing to do with material things. It was more about like how he made them feel when he was like talking to them. And that if they felt like they were heard and that they were known and that they were loved.
Oh, that's perfect.
Isn't that so nice?
It is nice.
Yeah. So I wanted to end tonight. We lost Barbara Bush yesterday. So I don't care if you were political, anything. It doesn't matter if you were a Republican or a Democrat. Who gives a shit? You have to be a human being to know that she was just an incredible, incredible woman. So one of my favorite quotes that came out, yesterday from her, I'd like to end the podcast with that. At the end of your life, you will never regret not having passed one more test, not winning one more verdict, or not closing one more deal. You will regret time not spent with a husband, a friend, a child, or a parent.